Hey, so I'm going to be going over the North Carolina EOC Math 1 released form. You can find it online just by Googling Math 1 EOC released. It'll pop up like that. And on this release form, they do include the answers down at the bottom, but I'm going to be explaining how you can get to all of those answers and what I think are some of the best ways to get there. So we'll start with the calculator inactive section. So for this part, you can't use a calculator or anything where you see the X'd out calculator. Then you're supposed to just do it either by hand or with paper or in your head. And the first question, it says, which choice is the graph of y equals the quantity 4 minus x times the quantity x plus 2? So just looking at this, we'll see that this is going to be a quadratic function. If you are to FOIL it out, or to basically distribute the 4 and the negative x, you'd get 4x plus 8 minus x squared, x times x is x squared, minus 2x. So if you write that out in order, I think it's reversed on this camera, so I'm just going to write it as negative x squared. That would be 4x minus 2x gives you positive 2x plus 8. So y equals that. And factoring out like that, or foiling it out, sorry, it's the opposite of factoring, is mostly going to be helpful because that will tell you when the y, or what the y-intercept is. So when x is 0, what is the y value going to be? Right, if you plug in a 0 for x, that'd be negative 0 squared plus 2 times 0, that's 0 plus 0 plus 8. So when our x value is 0, our y value would be 8, which means essentially our y-intercept is 8. So we want one that has a y-intercept of 8, which actually there's only two options that have that, a and d. So we've already now narrowed it down to a and d. And then you can look at the a term, so basically what the coefficient is in front of the x squared term. In this case, that's a negative, or you can think of it as negative 1. Because it's negative, that means the quadratic is negative. I tell my kids to remember that the negative ones make a frowny face, like think of like a negative attitude, and the positive ones make a smiley face. So in this case, we're going to have a negative, a frowny face. So that would narrow it down to a and b, and since we know the y-intercept is 8, then we know it's a. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to figure out the zeros. So I still would recommend foiling it out or just using the distributive property so you could figure out if it's positive or negative. But since this is already in the factored form, you could just set y equal to 0, which when y equals 0, that's going to be on your x-axis. And then you have to figure out when it would be 0. So if it's a factor times another factor equals 0, then one of those factors must be 0, right? The only thing you can multiply something by to get 0 is 0. So either 4 minus x is 0, which is true when x equals 4. You can see right here, x equals 4. Or x plus 2 equals 0, which is true when x equals negative 2. So those are your two zeros, or roots. Sometimes they're even called solutions. There are two right there, 4 and negative 2. And that's the only one of these graphs that has 4 and negative 2. So that's how we know it's a. All right, so there's a couple ways to prove it's a. It's negative, y-intercept is 8, and we've got 4 and negative 2 as our roots. All right, next we've got, in which graph does the shaded region represent the solution set for the inequality shown below? So with this, I had one kid who tried this problem. They said, well, it's less than, and you told me less than means shade down. So it's got to be one of the ones that are shading down, and then he narrowed it down to A and C. But the problem with that is you can't really look if it's less than or greater than until you have y alone. Because in this case, we have a negative y is less than, which if we remember when you divide or multiply by a negative, you actually have to flip that sign. So you're going to end up with a greater than, not a less than, when you actually get the y alone. So here what we just start with is getting y alone. So subtract 2x from both sides. You get negative y is less than negative 2x plus 4. Then you want to get rid of the negative. So you can multiply or divide by negative 1, but you have to divide everything by negative 1. So that means the negative y would become positive y. The sign will flip. If you multiply or divide by a negative, that's the one time you flip the sign. So it'll change from less than to greater than. So y is greater than. And again, we had subtracted 2x from both sides. So it's negative 2x. That negative 2x will become positive 2x. And then our positive 4 will become a negative 4. Right? If you multiply or divide by a negative, it flips a positive to a negative, negative to a positive. So, I'm trying to do this backwards. Got it wrong. There we go. So we'll have this. Y is greater than 2x minus 4. So that means we're shading up. Now I always try to trick my kids. I say, if it's greater than, does that mean we shade to the right or to the left? Well, if it's y is greater than, we're not shading to the right or left because y is up and down. So think, are we shading above or below? And if it's greater than something, that means it has to be more than that or above that. So we're shading above the line. So we want one that's shading above. So that's going to be either B or D. Those are the two that are shading upward. And then you'd say, all right, well, our slope is positive 2. So that means going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. This one's a negative slope. And our y-intercept should be negative 4. Which means it's actually not even going to show up on this graph because this doesn't show y values below 0. But you can see it's going to be this one because if you continue this going down, it would cross around here, which should be where negative 4 is. It goes up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and so on, and shading upward. Both C and D have the same line, and in both cases it's dotted or dashed. That's because you don't include the points on the line because it's y is greater than. Right? If it was greater than or equal to, you would include the whole line. Because it's just greater than, it's the dashed line, we're shading upward. So D is our answer here. All right, next we've got which expression is equivalent to x plus 2 times, or the quantity x plus 2 times the quantity 3x minus 3. This is just foiling it. So x times 3x gives you 3x squared. And then we've got to make sure you distribute the x to both terms. So we get x times negative 3 is negative 3x. And then 2 times 3x is positive 6x. So our OI term, the outside and inside term, is negative 3x plus 6x. Think of that as you have 6x's and negative 3 of them, and then negative 3x's. So you're giving 3 of them away. 6 minus 3 is 3. So you have 3 x's left. So it's 3x squared plus 3x, and then positive 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So 3x squared plus 3x minus 6 would be our answer, B. Just make sure, again, that you distribute it fully. When you first see a problem like this, before you've learned how to FOIL or to distribute a binomial into another binomial, then you would think it's A, right? Or if you just are a little bit sloppy with your signs, you could get C or D. So just take your time on this and you'll get B. All right, then we've got 4. A line y equals mx plus b passes through the point 1 comma 6 and is parallel to y equals 4x plus 6. What is the value of b? So they love these questions. Either they'll have it parallel or perpendicular to another line that tells you what the slope is. And then it passes through a point. So you can plug that in algebraically or do it geometrically, or graphically, I mean, not geometrically. But the first thing we want to do is find the slope. So if it's parallel means that the lines go up at the exact same rate. They have the same slope. That's why they never cross. Parallel lines never cross. The alternative they could say is perpendicular, which would mean they're essentially opposites of each other. So the slopes will be opposite reciprocals, meaning if one is going up if one is going up, the other one's going down, right? So if one's positive, the other one's negative. And if one's really steep, the other one's really flat. So in this case, if it was perpendicular, which it's not, you'd go from a slope of 4 in this line to the perpendicular slope of negative 1/4, right? You switch from a positive to a negative, and from 4 to the reciprocal 4, which is 1/4. So that would be perpendicular. For parallel, it's a lot easier. Just make sure you look closely which it is, what they're asking for. Parallel, it's just the same slope. So if this one has a slope of 4, then our line also has a slope of 4. We don't look at this plus 6 because this line is a different y-intercept than our line. We don't know what our y-intercept is. That's actually what we're solving for, the B. All right, so we know our line has a slope of 4. So we could say y is equal to, and then it would be 4x. Sorry, I'm messing up my 4 here. 4x plus b, and we don't know what b is. Okay, so y equals 4x plus b, and now we can use this point to solve for what b is. Now, if you want to do it graphically, you would just draw a picture, and you would say, or you could just draw this point, 1 comma 6, and then you'd go down 4 and to the left 1 to see where you came from if you're going up 4 over 1 every time, up 4 to the right 1. And down 4 from 6 is 2. So that means if you start at 0 comma 2, going up 4 over 1 would bring you to 1 comma 6. So that's how you could do it graphically. That's probably how I would do it in my head if I was trying to do it quickly. But if you want to be sure that you get it, you could do it algebraically just by plugging in this point. The x value is 1, right? We write x comma y. So our x value is 1, our y value is 6. So just plug in 1 for x, 6 for y. And then you go from having 3 variables, x, y, and b, to having just a b, right? And then you can quickly solve for b by getting the b alone. So in this case, we would plug in 1 for x plus b equals 6. So we get 4 times 1, which is 4, plus b equals 6. I did my 6 Sorry, again, the thing is backwards, so I draw everything backwards. 4 times 1 plus b equals 6, so that's 4 plus b equals 6. And then you would just think, what plus 4 makes 6? Well, that would be 2. Or you could subtract 4 from both sides. 6 minus 4 is 2. So our b value here would be 2. All right, next we have two functions are shown below. What is the largest integer value of x such that f of x is less than or equal to g of x? Now, if this was on the calculator active section, which it's not, you can see it's still on the inactive section, then you would just type both of these functions in and see when they cross. And let's say they want them once the largest integer such that they're either equal or that g is bigger than f. So presumably g will start higher, right, in the positive integers, and then as they go up, as x goes up, f will go up at an increasing rate because it's an exponential function. So eventually f is going to pass g, and then g will never catch back up. So you just want to find the last value where either they're the same or where g is still bigger. Now, because it's not on the calculator active section, I would just make a table for this. So you could plug in for each function, when x is 1, what's your output for f, what's your output for g? When x is 2, what's your output for f, what's your output for g? And just go from there and then figure out what's the biggest value where it's still true. Now, in this case, it's a little hard for me to do with a board. I have done this one before with my kids, though. And I know, let's see, when you plug in 1 for f, it's 1/2 times 2 to the first. 2 to the first is just 2. 1/2 times 2 is 1, right? Because 1/2 times, it's just multiplying by the reciprocal makes 1. So for f of x, when you input 1, you get 1. And then every time x goes up by 1, you have one more 2 that you're multiplying it by, right? 2 is the growth factor here for this exponential function. So it's just going to be doubling. So we'll go from when x is 1, it's 1. X is 2, it's 2. When x is 3, it will be 4. Because again, we're just doubling it. Then it will go to 8, then 16, then 32. And 64, and so on. For g of x, it's linear. So it's starting at 2, your y-intercept is 2, and your slope is 5. So it's going up 5 each time. So it starts when x is 1, or I guess you could start at 0 technically, but we know it's going to be probably bigger than 1 or 0. So when x is 1, you have 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So for g of x, let's see, g would be like that. For g of x, it would start at 7, which is higher than 1, and then it goes up 5 each time. So it'll go to 12, and then it will go to 17, and then 22, and then 27, and then 32, which is actually when the two functions will be equal. Right, so I just try to draw this out here. So that would be at, let's see, 4, 5, 6. So when x equals 6, they're both 32. And as we said, you could see f of x started smaller, and it's going up even at a slower rate at the beginning, but it's doubling each time. So this one will go all the way up to 64, whereas this one will only go up to 37 when x is 7. And g of x is never going to catch up because f is doubling, whereas this is just linear growth. So 6, when they're equal, is the last time that they're either equal or that g is bigger. So our answer there would be 6. All right, so again, for anything where you're comparing functions and you don't have a calculator or you don't have access to the calculator, you can just make a table and plug it in until you can find the point and just read really closely. In this case, it said less than or equal to. So just specifically, what are they asking for? I had one student who answered this question as 7 because they thought it was saying what's the first integer where f is bigger. But no, it's saying what's the largest integer where g is still bigger. Okay. All right, a company models its net income in thousands of dollars with the function f of x equals 9x squared minus 54x minus 144. All right, so f of x is your net income. X is the number of units of its product sold. How many units of its product does the company need to sell in order for the net income to equal 0? Well, the net income is f of x, so you're just setting f of x equal to 0. So you'd say 0 equals, and then all this stuff, 9x squared minus 54x minus 144. So you're essentially solving for the zeros of this, except they're only asking for one answer, which I would presume means that one of the answers is going to be positive, one will be negative. And since x is the input, it's the number of units. You can't sell a negative number of units. So what they're probably looking for is the positive answer, just in advance. So we have 0 equals all of this stuff, and then you just want to basically factor it. And I would start by getting rid of this times 9. So you could factor a 9 out front, or since it doesn't actually change the value of x, you could just basically divide everything by 9, because 0 divided by 9 is still 0. 9x squared divided by 9 is just x squared. 54 is 9 times 6, so this would become x squared minus 6x minus, and 144 would be divided by 9 times 16, right? Because it's 3 times 4 times 3 times 4, 12 squared. So we'd get x squared minus 6x minus 16. Let me write that on my board here. X squared minus, do it backwards, 6x minus 16, like that, is equal to 0. And then you just have to factor this. And if we look at it, it's going to be the quantity x minus something times the quantity x plus something, so that you get a negative. And it looks like it would be 8 and 2, because 8 and 2 multiply to make 16, and they are 6 apart. So it's going to be x minus 8, because the negative one has to be bigger if they add up to a negative. So, right, negative 8 plus positive 2 makes negative 6. So we'll get x minus 8 times the quantity x minus 2 is equal to 0. And then once you have that, you just solve for the zeros when each of the factors is 0. So this would be 0 when x equals positive 8. Right, x minus 8 is 0 when, 8 minus 8 is 0. And x minus 2 is 0 when x equals, what would that be? X equals positive 2? Did I do that wrong? Oh, that was supposed to be x plus 2. Sorry, x plus 2. I had said that, but then I didn't write it down. Because positive 2 times negative 8 makes negative 16. Positive 2 plus negative 8 makes negative 6. So this would be x plus 2 is 0 when x equals negative 2. And again, we have to reject that negative 2 because you can't sell a negative number of units. So they just want the positive answer, which is 8. All right, so if you sell 8 units, you'd get an income of 0. And if you want to check that, just plug 8 into this. So you'd get 9 times 64 minus 54 times 8 minus 144. That's going to give you 0. Just to confirm that, let's see. 64 times 9 would give you, well, we could say it's 640 minus 64, which would be 576. So you get 576 minus 54 times, what do we say, 8? 54 times 8 give you, let's see, 32. 8 times 5 is 40, so 43. So we get minus 432. So 576 minus 432, which gives you 144. And then 144 minus 144 is 0. So again, just to make sure you get the answer right, plug it back in at the end. And if it gives you what you're looking for, then you know you did it right. A lot of times with an algebra test, a lot of the questions you'll actually know if you got them right or wrong before you even move on to the next question. If you want to check it, spend the extra 30 seconds to check. All right, Joanna has a total of 50 coins in her purse. The coins are either nickels or quarters, and the total value of the coins is $7.10. All right, so which system of equations can you use to determine the number of nickels N and quarters Q that Joanna has in her purse? Well, we're going to have two equations. One of them will be for the total number of coins. We know that adds up to 50. And N is the number of nickels, Q is the number of quarters. So N plus Q would be all your coins. N plus Q has to add up to 50. All right, so it looks like there's only actually one that has that as an option. So we already kind of know it's going to be A, because it's the only one with N plus Q equals 50. But let's just confirm that the other one is also correct. The other one is going to have to do with the value, which will be $7.10. And then you have to multiply the value per coin times each coin. So, or times the number of that coin. So in this case, a nickel is 5 cents. So 0.05 times N would give you the total value of all the nickels, because you have N is the number of nickels. So each nickel is 5 cents. You multiply the value of each nickel times the number of nickels. This is the total value of the nickels. And then for the quarters, each quarter is worth 25 cents. So 0.25 times Q will give you the total value of the quarters. And that has to add up to that total value of 710. So A is your answer here. And yeah, even just from one equation, you could figure that out. But again, I would always check the second one just to make sure. Take your time on these, because they're easy as long as you take your time. But a lot of kids will get it just quickly tripped up because they're trying to rush. All right, the function f of x equals f of x equals negative 0.25x plus 5 models the height of a candle x seconds after it is lit. So it looks like the slope is negative 0.25. That means every second that passes, ready to say x is seconds, every second that passes, the height goes down by a quarter of, I don't think it gives the units, but whatever, a quarter of an inch or whatever it's supposed to be. And then plus 5 is when x is 0. So when 0 seconds have passed, it has a height of 5. 5, whatever unit, doesn't say. So what are they asking? What is the meaning of the y-intercept of the function? Well, we just said the y-intercept is the plus 5, right? That would be the b, the plus b, if it was y equals mx plus b. So when x is 0, your height is 5. And again, what that means is the height at the beginning is 5. The initial height of the candle, right? Initial means the beginning. You can think of like the initials of your name are the beginning parts of your name, right? Like the first letter of your first name, first letter of your last name. It's the initial part. So initial means at time 0 or at the very beginning. So the initial height of the candle is, yeah, that's what it would be. So when x is 0. We just rule out the other ones. The final height of the candle, no. I mean, final height, I guess that would be 0. Assuming it burns all the way through, I don't know. And then the rate at which the candle is burning, no, that would be the slope. Although that's more the change in height per second, because technically it burns at a rate of a quarter per second. And the amount of time it will take the candle to burn, no, that would be the x-intercept. So that would be when y is 0. So if you wanted to find out how much time it takes for the candle to burn, you would set this part equal to 0. But they're saying the y-intercept, which is when x is 0. Okay, so A is your answer there. All right, 9 and 10 gridded response. Okay, I don't think we have to worry about that because I'm not gridding the answers in. But the total cost in dollars of a membership in a fitness center is given by the function C of M equals 20M plus 40. So this is not C times M. This is just saying whatever you input for M, put it in here, and that will give you the cost. All right, it's a function notation there. So M is the number of months a person is a member. So presumably it's like a $40 sign-up fee. A lot of times they do this just so you don't cancel the membership right away. Like, oh, I already paid $40, so even though I'm not using it, it's sunk cost fallacy they're trying to get you with. And then they do $20 times the number of months. So this is like the monthly fee. In dollars, how much would it cost, or how much is the cost of a membership for 1 year? All right, so just take your time here. Note that M is the number of months. And they're asking for 1 year, because I think some kids would just input 1 in just without thinking. But it's 1 year compared to months. So always look at your units. 1 year is 12 months. So you input 12 for M. And that would be 20 times 12. So it's basically 2 times 12 times 10. 2 times 12 is 24 times 10 makes 240. So you get 240 for the monthly fees plus the $40 initial fee, or whatever the y-intercept is here. So 240 plus 40 gives you 280. Right, so that's all you got to do here is just plug that in. Don't think too much about it. Just make sure, again, check your units before you do it. So $280. And then water is being pumped into a 10-foot tall cylindrical tank at a constant rate. The depth of the water is increasing linearly. So if it's a constant rate and it's a perfect cylinder, that does make sense. It would be going up at the same exact rate. So every hour that passes, it would go up the same amount of depth or height, whatever they're saying. Yeah, the depth. All right, and then they give you at 130, it's 2.4. At 4, it is 3.9. So they did not say it starts out empty. Some of my students will do this, will say, well, it took an hour and a half for it to get to 2.4. They also didn't say it starts filling it up at noon or anything. So, like, it's not going to be, you're not doing this as like a proportion of 2.4 over 130 equals x over 5. Don't do anything like that, because that's not what it's looking for. They're looking for rate of change. So your rate of change here, you need to figure out, well, first, what's the change, right? How much is the height changing? That's like your change in y. And then why it's called rate of change is like how much is changing per unit time or unit x. In this case, it's per hour. So it goes from 2.4 up to 3.9. That's a change of 1.5. I did that in my head. You probably can do that pretty comfortably, but on the test, you might want to just take your time to write it out if you want to be really safe, because you don't want to do all the hard part and then just mess up some easy math. But 3.9 minus 2.4 is 1.5. So it goes up by 1.5. Doesn't even say what the units are. 1.5 feet. In how much time? It went from 1:30 to 4 o'clock. So same thing here. Like it's pretty simple. That's 2.5 hours. But I did work on this problem with a couple of my students where they said, oh, that's 3.5 hours, because they were just going quickly. Like, take your time, right? 2 hours would get you to 3:30, and then you need another half hour to get you to 4. So it's 1.5 feet in 2.5 hours. All right. So if we write that as slope, change in y, change in output, in this case that's height or depth, divided by change in x, which in this case would be time. Right? It doesn't matter what time it is for this bottom, it's how much time passed. So 1.5 divided by 2.5. Now if you had a calculator, you could just type that in, it'd be easy. But if you have to do this math and you don't have a calculator, I would change this whenever you're dividing like a decimal by a decimal, and if they both have the same number of decimal places, you just like move this one over and move this one over. That's like multiplying the top and the bottom by 10, which is okay because it's like multiplying it by 1. So it would become 15 divided by 25. So 15 divided by 25 is a little easier to simplify. You just take a 5 out of the top and the bottom. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. So we have 3/5, and 3/5, that means every 5 hours it would go up by 3 feet. That doesn't really help us that much because we don't want 5 hours to pass. We want 1 hour to pass. So what we need to do is change this into a decimal to figure out how much would go up, how much it would go up in 1 hour. So, or you just divide both by 5, and that means in 1 hour it goes up by 0.6. Right, 3/5 is equal to 0.6. So every hour goes up by 0.6. So if at 4 o'clock it's 3.9, 5 is 1 hour after that. So 1 hour after, add that rate of change, 0.6 per hour. 3.9 plus 0.6 would give you 4.5. So at 5 o'clock, it would be 4.5 feet. And we just take a second, just be like, does that make sense? Well, it needs to be higher than it was at 4. So we know it's definitely, right, it at least makes sense that way. And it should be closer to 3.9 than 2.4 is, because 1:30 is a longer time away. Okay, so that part does add up. And then let's see. Got another word problem where you have to choose the right, in this case, inequalities to represent the context here. So Sally works at a store. X represents Sally's monthly paycheck. Y represents her monthly savings. So that might be worth underlining. X is the paycheck. Y is the savings. Right? They're both monthly, but you might want to make sure you don't get that confused because that's probably what they're going to switch with some of the options. Sally will have at least $20 more than half her paycheck each month, or will save, sorry, not have. She will save at least, so the savings again is Y, so that means Y is at least 20 more than half her paycheck. All right, so I would start by writing out Y on this side, so we want the Y part to be alone. And at least, a lot of my kids will mess this up when they're rushing, because it sounds like less than, right? At least is like a more extreme version of less. But when you say at least, it actually means greater than or equal to. Because if you're saying this is the least, it has to be at least this much, then you actually want it to be that much or more. Right? Which, you know, when you think about it, you know. But it's just when you try to rush through it, you're going to change it to less than. So, you know, just think of an example like you need to get at least 30 questions right on the test. Right? That means you could get 30 questions or you could get any number more than 30. But at least, that means 30 is the least you can get. So 30 is like the floor. You can't go below the floor. All right, so Y is greater than or equal to half or 20 more than half the paycheck. So 20 more means 20 plus, or the paycheck plus, and half her paycheck. The paycheck again is X. So that should be X over 2 or 1/2 X. All right. So we have this. Y is greater than or equal to 20 plus X over 2, or again, it could be 1/2 X. So let's look at these. So here you can see this one, they try to trick you. They switched X and Y. Right, because this is what we want, except Y and X are flipped. Oh, and it's less than or equal to. Here we have Y is greater than or equal to 1/2 X plus 20. All right, so that's what we want. Right, I just switched the 20 and the 1/2 X the place of them, but that's the commutative property of addition. Doesn't matter what order you add it. It's still the same thing. So this one could work. This one doesn't work because it's less than or equal to, right? They're trying to get you with that trick I said. At least means greater than or equal to. And then here again, they switch the X and the Y. So actually, this is another one where you could, I guess with these word problem ones, if you make sure you get the first thing right, you might be able to eliminate all the other options. So we already know it's going to be B. because that's the only one that has the first part right. But if we just want to check the other things, she can save at most. So at most, the opposite of at least, right? At most is saying it can't be more than the most, right? So it actually, again, sounds like more than, which you'd think a greater than sign. But since it's setting that ceiling, you can't go above the ceiling, then this is going to be less than or equal to. It has to be less than or equal to 80 more than 2/3 of her paycheck. So it's 80 plus 2/3 x. Let's see, y is less than or equal to 2/3 x plus 80. And you can also think, like, for this to make sense, this is like 2/3 x plus 80, assuming x is positive, is going to be bigger than 1/2 x plus 20. And your monthly paycheck has to be positive. They're not taking money from you for doing a job. So this is bigger than this. So it wouldn't make sense for, it wouldn't make sense that you could save less than a small amount or more than a big amount. Right? It has to be in between. Right? It has to be something between those two ranges. Right? So it's greater than the smaller one, less than the bigger one. And then the last things they say are her paycheck has to be at least $1,200, so that's greater than or equal to $1,200, and no more than $1,850, so less than or equal to $1,850. All right, so B checks out. So B would be our answer there, and that's how you can work through that and just make sure, I would, even though, again, we knew it after just the first whatever bullet point that they gave us, or the second bullet point they gave us, but just to be sure, I would check all of them because, you're getting a lot of time on these kinds of tests, so it's worth checking it and being really diligent as you go through it. Now, if you're running low on time, then you might want to just take some of the shortcuts, but if you've got a lot of time left, then it's worth checking your answers as you go. All right, here we have, it looks like a literal equation. So they're giving us some equation, and it looks like we're trying to solve for P. So let's just read through it to make sure. A company uses the formula T equals 581S plus 150P to determine the total cost to purchase S computers and P printers. So I guess 581 is the cost for them to purchase a computer, and 150 is the cost for them to purchase a printer. Now, you probably don't need to know that or think about that to solve the problem, but that's just, that's where this is probably coming from. Which formula can be used to determine the number of printers purchased? So the number of printers is P. So basically, we're trying to get P alone is all this is asking for, given the total cost T and the number of computers purchased. So again, to solve this, you don't need to understand where this formula is coming from. Now, it's still probably valuable to have that as a skill. Be like, oh, well, if S is the number of computers and you're multiplying it by 581, that's probably the cost per computer, right? Just having that logic is good. But for this one, just note, they're trying to get P alone. And you can even just look at the answer choices to figure that part out. But if you want P alone, and right now T is alone, then you're just manipulating this, like moving the numbers around to get P alone. So we'd start by getting rid of the 581S, right? This part doesn't even have a P in it. And since you're adding that to 150P, the opposite of adding is subtracting. So we just subtract 581S from both sides. So minus 581S minus 581S. Cancel it out on the right, and you get T minus 581S equals 150P. So now you've got your P's alone, but you've got 150 P's. You only want 1 P. So to get rid of a times 150, you do the opposite of times, just divide by 150. If you divide the right side by 150, you have to divide the left as well. So you divide this by 150P and get P alone, right, which is what we have here. And then the T minus 581S would also be divided by 150. So just find one that's T minus 581S right here, and then divided by 150. So C would be your answer. These kind of problems, a lot of times my kids, like, you're reading this stuff, like, I don't know what's going on with printers or computers. You don't need to understand, like, the market of computers and printers or any kind of supply and demand things like that. There's nothing like that. All you're doing is they give you an equation. They have T alone. They want you to get P alone. And there's nothing really that fancy. Just treat it as if everything else was numbers. Like if you want to get P alone, right, you just first subtract the other term and then you divide. The same way you would do if it was an X here and you're just trying to solve for X in terms of a number. Right, you're just solving for P in terms of the other letters. All right, so that's how we get that. All right, next up we have another quadratic. What is the value of the positive 0 of the function f defined by f of x equals x squared minus 121? So this is a difference of squares. Make sure you're confident with difference of squares because I'm sure at least one will come up. They're really easy as long as you know how to do it. But it's the special case for like factoring, or or even for foiling if you're going in the other direction, where you don't have an OI term. And I call it the OI term because the outside and the inside term. It's where you don't have a term that's just x. You have the x squared term, you have the constant, but there's no just x term. And that's because they cancel out because they're additive inverses of each other. Like they're just opposites. So the way that works is it's just you have, when you factor it, one of the factors is the square root of the first thing plus the square root of the second thing. The other factor is the square root of the first thing minus the square root of the second thing. The reason they cancel out is because you'd get, in this case, right, that's going to be x and 11. Well, you'd end up with a positive 11x and a negative 11x, which will cancel out when you add them up, right? They're just going to, right, they add up to 0. So you're only left with the f term, right, the first times the first, and the L term, the last times the last. And that's how this is negative, is you have to have a negative and a positive. So this one's going to be x plus 11 times x minus 11. That's all you got to do. If you want to check it after you've factored it, just FOIL it out, right? X times x is x squared. 11x minus 11x is 0. 11 or positive 11 times negative 11 gives you negative 121. All right, so that's how you'd get that. And then once you have it factored, they want the zeros, so just set it equal to 0. And then you'd figure out when each of the factors is 0. So x plus 11 is 0 when x equals negative 11. X minus 11 equals 0 when x equals positive 11. And they are specifically asking for the positive 0, which is going to be x equals positive 11. Okay? So 11 is your answer. All right, next we have what is the value of x in the system of equations below. This one you just do substitution. You could do elimination if you really don't feel comfortable with substitution, but it's way easier because they give you y alone. So just put this 1 minus x in place of the y, right? You're just substituting, in this case, something equal to y, which is 1 minus x, put it in place of the y. And put it in parentheses because you have to multiply 4 by the entire thing. So 4 times 1 and 4 times negative x, right? Because you're not multiplying part of y by 4, you're multiplying all of y. So 5x plus 4 times 1 is 4, plus 4 times negative x is negative 4x. So 5x minus 4x is just x. We'd get x plus 4 equals 1. That's nice because x is already alone. Just subtract 4 from both sides, you get x alone here then. So x equals 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So x equals negative 3 would be your answer here. Normally with a system of equations, you need to then plug x back in to solve for y. But they just want x, right? They said, what's the value of x? So you just leave it at negative 3. Right? So that's your answer. It would be pretty easy. Again, just if you needed both, you just plug it in. 1 minus negative 3. Just remember that minus a negative becomes plus a positive. So 1 minus negative 3 would be the same as 1 plus 3. So 4. So this one should be negative 3, 4, but they're just asking for x, so that would be negative 3. All right, and then 15 is the last question on the calculator inactive part. It says, what is the value of the smaller 0 of the function f of x equals 2x squared minus 8x minus 24? Well, this one, so this smaller 0, so just find the 0, set f of x equal to 0. So 0 equals all of this stuff. And then these are all even numbers. So you can divide everything by 2. 0 divided by 2 is still 0. 2x squared would become just x squared. And then negative 8x would become negative 4x. And negative 24 would become negative 12. All right, so we get 0 equals this thing. And then you have to factor this. Let's see, what times what could give you 12 and add up to negative 4? Well, it could be 6 and 2 are 4 apart. And you'd want the negative one to be the bigger number, in this case the 6, because they add up to negative 4. Right? If it added up to positive 4, you'd want a positive 6 and a negative 2. Whenever you factor, I would recommend that you always FOIL it right after or distribute right after to make sure that you factored correctly. Because especially if you're rushing, it's pretty easy to mess that up, even if you just mess up the sign. Okay, so we get this is equal to 0. Right? The quantity x minus 6 times the quantity x plus 2 equals 0. But now we need to find when these factors are 0. So don't rush here, because a lot of my kids would say, all right, so our answers are negative 6 and positive 2. No, they're not, right? It's when is this equal to 0? The one that has minus 6 is actually when x is positive 6, right? Because positive 6 minus 6 is 0. And the one that's plus 2 would become negative 2 for your x value, because negative 2 plus 2 equals 0. So those are your two answers, negative 2 and 6. They want the smaller 0. So the smaller number is the negative one, right? If you have a negative and positive, negative is smaller. It's also a smaller absolute value, in case they ask that, which they didn't in this case. But our answer would be x equals -2. That's the smaller of the two zeros. Right. So that would be the end of the calculator inactive part. When you take the test, you can check your answers on the calculator inactive part, but once you move on, you can't go back. So just make sure that a lot of times these are a little bit easier. So make sure you've got all the ones done that you know how to do, and then when you're confident, you can move on. Assuming you have enough time, because if you're running low on time, you might want to just move on with minimal checking. But yeah, once you're confident, move on to the next part. In this case, we start with, it looks like a 2-variable stats question. So we're going to type this table into our, actually, let's see what they're looking for first. Performed a linear regression. Yeah, so I'll probably put this into Desmos so we can do a linear regression, best fit line. And which data point did this statistician exclude? So I think they're just trying to find which one has the biggest residual. So basically, which is the biggest outlier. So based on the residual plot, the statistician decided to exclude one data point, then perform the linear regression on the set of the remaining data points. The result was that the new linear model fit the remaining data more closely. Okay. So the point that you're going to exclude, again, is the one with the biggest residual, so the one that's furthest away from the line of best fit. So let's see, 2.3, 4.2, 5.1. If you want to make a table, you just type the word table. You can also push plus and table right there, but I just like to type it in. Again, we had 2.3, 4.2, 5.1. And then we had 6.4, 8.2, 8.5. Okay, now we need to make sure our y values are lined up correctly, but we've got 11.0, 16.5, 19.2. And I think when they take the test on your Chromebook, like for the actual EOC, it will be built in, so you'll have it just like you won't have to keep clicking between the two tabs, which is nice. We got 23.1, 24.3, and it was 29 point. I didn't see what it was. 29.5. All right, so we've got our data points, and if you want to zoom out, you can even see them. If you want to make it fit a little bit better, I would go, all right, well, we want our x values to go from, let's say, like -2 to, what's the biggest one is 8.5, so -2 to 10. And then they all fit on there. And then our height is already lined up pretty well. You could adjust the height as well so that it fits, because you don't want it to be too stretched out or compressed. All right, now if we want to do a line of best fit, it's kind of like y equals mx plus b, right? That's the equation for a line. Y equals the slope times x plus the y-intercept. But you have to specify which x's are you talking about. Well, in this case, we're talking about x1, right? That's what the table says. So x1 and y, what y's you're talking about? Well, y1. Except we don't want it to be, we're not saying it's exactly equal to this. It's a line of best fit. So it's approximately equal to. So I'm going to use this squiggle button, which you do shift, and then it's buttoned right to the left of the 1. If you want to use it on your keyboard, you could find it here. Let's see. So you go to ABC, and there's your squiggle right there. Right? It's like a little tilde. So y1 squiggle mx1 plus b. And that's how you should think about it, is start with y equals mx plus b, and then specify which y's am I talking about. It's not equal to, it's about equal to. And then which x's am I talking about. The m and the b stay exactly the same, but don't forget the b. All right, and then it pops up with your correlation coefficient, r, right? That's how close it is to the line. It's actually very close already. I don't know why they're taking out a point. Right, the closer this is to 1 or -1, the better the fit. It's a positive relationship, which means when this one goes up, the other one goes up. Your slope is 2.659, so about 2.66. So that means, what is it? Do they even say what the variables? No, it doesn't say what they are. But every time x goes up by 1, y is expected to go up by about 2.7, 2.66. And your y-intercept is 5.137. So when you input 0, that's what you're expected to get. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what you'll get at 0, but that would be the prediction from this model. All right, so that's what we got. Just looking at it, you can see probably one of these two is the worst fit. Probably this one. It's like the ones that are furthest away from the line. But if you click this button that says Residuals Plot, it will actually tell you how far each one is away. It's just which of these numbers is the biggest absolute value. Well, yeah, like we said, it would be this one, the second to last point, because that is 2.64 away from the line. It's beneath the line, It doesn't matter if it's underneath or above, it's just how far it is. So the one that you're going to exclude is 8.2, 24.3 if that's an option. Let's see. Yep, so D would be the point that you would exclude because, again, it has the highest residual. So it's the biggest outlier in this case. All right, so that's how you'd figure out that one. So that's D. A set of 9 data points is shown below. All right, 8, 11, 12, 10, 9, 7, 5, 3, 9. Which statement is true if a 10th data point of 45 is added to the data set? All right, so 45 is way bigger than all of these. Let's see, if we put these in order, we've got 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, 11, 12. And there's how many points here? There are 9 points. So the middle is the 5th. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th point is 9. So I guess what they're going to say is that the median doesn't change because the median for 10 points would be between 9 and 9, which is 9. So the median will stay the same. But if you add a point that's an outlier, an extreme, in this case, like on the upper end, it's going to raise the mean. So the mean will go up, but not the median. That's what we're going to say. The mean and median will both increase. Nope. The mean will increase and the median will decrease. No, the median will stay the same. The mean will increase and the median will remain the same. So it would be C. Right? C would be your answer. You don't even have to figure out what the new mean is. You just know if you add something bigger to the set, it's going to raise the mean in all cases. Right? Next one, we've got 18. What is the distance in units between the y-intercept of f of x equals x squared plus 7x minus 18 and the y-intercept of the linear function that passes through the points shown in the table below? Okay. So the y-intercept of this first thing is negative 18. Right, the y-intercept is just when x equals 0. You could type it into the graphing calculator to be sure. I'll show you how to do that. You just go f of x equals x squared plus 7x minus 18. But just thinking of it algebraically, 0 squared plus 7 times 0 is 0 plus 0 minus 18. So this one's going to have a y-intercept of negative 18. And then your other one, well, if it was on the inactive section, you could figure out the slope and then find the y-intercept from that. Like, oh, every time x goes up by 15, what happens to the y value, and then divide it by 15. But because it's on the calculator active section, what we could do is just make another table. And then we've got, let's see, x equals negative 5, 10, 25. And assuming these are actually, 101 by accident. Since these are actually points on a line, we don't even need all 4 points because they're all going to have the exact same slope. 2, 11, 20. You can see they actually appear to all fit on a line because they're all points on a line. This isn't like a scatter plot or a prediction model. So we're not even technically doing a best fit line. We're just making the line. But I'll do the same thing. Y1 squiggle mx1 plus b. And there's your y-intercept there, 5. Right? They also say it right there. So your y-intercept for this one is 5. The other one was negative 18. What do they say? What is the distance between the two y-intercepts? Yeah. So just figuring out how far apart are 5 and negative 18. Think about it for a second. I would have some students who would say, 13 apart, just 18 minus 5. No, you're doing 5 minus negative 18, which is 5 plus 18 is 23. Or you could just go, all right, this is 18 away from the origin. This one's 5 above the origin, so that's a total of 23. That's probably the smart way to do it, or you're not going to overthink it or mess up a negative or something. All right, so they are 23 apart. All right, that's probably the best way to do this if you have Desmos. Again, you can figure out the y-intercept on this one pretty quickly just by plugging in 0. And then for this one, you could figure out the slope. What is the slope for this? 0.6, so that's 3/5. It's the same slope from the earlier problem with the filling up the pool. You could just do, all right, the y value went up by, in this case, 9. The x value went up by 15. 9 divided by 15, right? That's 3/5. And then you use that slope to figure out what the y-intercept is, and you can plug in the points. But again, if you have the calculator, you might as well use it. All right, what's the value of x in the equation below? Okay, well, you got to distribute the 2 to the x, so 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 8 is 16. So 2x plus 16 minus 4x. 2x minus 4x is negative 2x. So we get negative 2x plus 16 equals 10x plus 4. I would put my x's on this side because you've got the positives. So I'd add 2x to both sides, and we'd get 16 equals 12x plus 4. Then subtract 4 from both sides. You get 16 minus 4 is 12. So 12 equals 12x. Well, what times 12 makes 12? 1, right? Something times 1 makes itself. So x is just going to be 1 in this case. And then what you should always do, because you're going to have time, plug in your answer and see if it's true. So let's see, 1 plus 8 makes 9, and 2 times 9 is 18. So 18 minus 4 times 1, it's 18 minus 4 is 14. All right, so this side is 14 when x is 1. Plug in 1 over here. 10 times 1 is 10. 10 plus 4 makes 14. So 14 equals 14. That checks out. All right, so that's how you could check that really quickly. See, even without I didn't even use the calculator for that, and it took maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds. All right, so this is the paper pencil copy of an online technology enhanced item. So on the real one, it would be like a drag and drop is what they're saying. All right, so you're just trying to figure out 3 systems of equations. Which one describes how many solutions are appropriate? Okay. So for these, I mean, since you have a calculator, you could just type them all into the calculator and you'd see if it's one solution, that's just 2 lines that cross at one point. If it's no solutions, that means that they're parallel, so they never cross. And if it's infinite solutions, they're going to just graph as the same exact line. So you could type them in and see that. What I usually do for these kind of problems is just look at like the left side if they have the x and y already alone, and just see what you'd have to do to get from one to the other. So in this case, there's nothing you can multiply the top by to get the bottom, because 2x becomes 4x, 2y becomes 3y. So there's nothing you can multiply 2 by that it becomes 4 and 3, right? That would be 2 different numbers, 2 and 1.5. So these are just 2 different lines. They're 2 different lines. They have 2 different slopes, and that means they're going to have one solution. So this would be one solution. 2 different lines with different slopes is what I meant to say. So this is one solution. The next one, you'd have to double it on the left side to get from here to here, right? 2 times 2x is 4x, 2 times 2y is 4y. And on the right, if you double it, you also get 16. So these are just the same line, except multiply the left and the right by 2, which doesn't change the value of the line. It's still the same exact function. So these are both going to have a slope that's the same, which would actually be, if you want to figure it out, would be minus 2x divided by 2 is negative x, or negative 1. Okay, so both of them have a slope of negative 1, and they have the same y-intercept, which would be, let's see, when x is 0, it'd be 4. Right? So they both have a y-intercept of 4 and the same slope of negative 1. So these ones are the same line. They have infinite solutions. And then the last one, we've got 2x plus 3y and 2x plus 3y. The left side is the same, but the right side is different. So there's no way to make that true, right? There's no way to make, right, if this is the same thing, it can't be equal to 12 and 18 at the same time. Those are 2 different answers. So this one's going to have no solutions. If you graphed it, they would be parallel lines because they both have the same slope, which would be, I think, negative 2/3. But they have different y-intercepts. This one would be 4. This one would be 6. All right, so this would be no solutions. Middle is infinite solutions. The left one is one solution. All right, down here, what is the equation that represents the line that is perpendicular to the graph 4x plus 3y equals 9 and passes through negative 2, 3? All right, so 4x plus 3y equals 9. Let's type that in here. 4x plus 2y equals 9. Did I type that right? Oh, it's 3y, not 2y. There we go. All right, so this one has a y-intercept, let me zoom this in, of 0, 3. And it goes through, is there another point it goes through? And they're all kind of ugly points. Down here. 3, 1, is that a point? 3, negative 1. So this one went down 4, no. Yeah, down 4 over 3, is that right? It went from 3 down to negative 1, so down 4 over 3. So this one has a slope of negative 4/3. So we want one that has a slope of positive 3/4 because it's perpendicular. So negative becomes positive, and 4/3 gets flipped to 3/4. All right, so which of these has that and passes through negative 2, 3? Well, we could just type all of these equations in. 3x minus 4y equals negative 18. Where did that one go? Oh, is that the same line? No? 3s supposed to be minus, right? No, it's not the same line. All right, did I write that right? 3x minus 4y equals negative 18. All right, well, does this one, for one, does it even pass through that point, negative 2 comma 3? Let's see. 2 over, it does go through negative 2, 3. But does that, I mean, they don't look perpendicular there, but I also have a weird scale on this. Let's see. Maybe I'll make it the same scale. It might be a little more clear if it is or not. Negative 10 to 10, and negative 10 to 10. Oh, okay, that looks like it could be perpendicular then. All right, well, then now we have to just figure out the slope of this one. So it goes, okay, let's find some points on here. Negative 6, 0, and what was that other point? The one that we said, negative 2 comma 3 or something? Negative 2 comma 3. All right, so if it goes from negative 6 to negative 2, that's up, or that's over 4. And if it's going up 3, so that's up 3 over 4, which is the reciprocal of negative 4/3. Okay, so this one has a slope. It doesn't quite look perpendicular, but it's going up 3 over 4. This one's going down 4 over 3. So those are reciprocal slopes, and it does pass through that point. So we actually already know it's going to be A. And you could type all these other ones in. They will either not pass through this point, or they won't have the right slope. All right, so that's how you can find the slope. I'm finding points on the line. You could also find the slope just by getting like y alone, and then putting it into slope. Put all of them into slope-intercept form, or at least enough to find the answer. But yeah, it works fine to do it with Desmos as well. And let's see. A club began with 3 members. Each month, each member brought 1 new member. Okay, so it starts with 3. That's the initial amount, and then each member brought 1 new member each month. So that means it's basically doubling the membership. Because if you had 3, then all of those 3 will bring 1. They have 6. And then each of those 6, the next month will bring 1. It'll go up to 6 times 2 is 12. Then 24. So it's doubling. So that means it's exponential growth. So we know it's not either of these. A and B are linear, right? This is just adding 2 people each time, adding 3 people each time. Each person is bringing their own person. So it's doubling. So it's one of these 2. And then let's see. We began with 3 members. X months after the club began. Okay, so X is the number of months after it began. So on week 0, it was still 3 people. So you want on week 0, it's 3. And on week 1, or 1 week after, it would be 6. Okay. So I guess then we would do 1.5 times 2 to the X. No, it wouldn't be that. It would be D. It would be D because when you input 0 weeks, that'd be 2 to the 0 is 1. So 3 times 1 is 3. So you want to start with 3 people, not 1.5. Okay, so D is your answer there. All right, but you could definitely, as long as you narrow it down to C and D, you're on the right track, but you're only getting credit for D. So make sure, just be careful. Just think, all right, when X is 0, what does that mean in this problem? In this case, that's 0 weeks after it began, so when it began. And then what do you want when it began? Well, it began with 3, they say. Okay, just take your time on that once you've narrowed it down to exponential or linear. In that case, it was exponential. All right, every 10 years, the census counts how many people are living in every town in the United States. All right, the 2010 census showed 1,000 people living in Appleville and 4,000 people living in Bridgetown. Okay, the population of Appleville is predicted to double every 10 years. Population of Bridgetown is predicted to increase by 1,000 every 10 years. Okay, so even though we have a calculator, I actually think the best way to do this would be with a table. Well, what are they asking for? It should come true. What will be the first census year? And they do the census every 10 years, I think they said. Yeah, every 10 years census counts. All right, so what would be the first year that Appleville will be larger than Bridgetown? Okay, so let's do... what was it? It started in 2010. So in 2010, it says Appleville was 1,000. And Bridgetown was 4,000. Okay. So Appleville's, what did it say, doubling? Appleville's doubling every 20 years, or 10 years. So it goes to 2020, it's going to be 2,000. 2030, it would be 4,000. And 2040, it would be 8,000. The other one is going, so Bridgetown is going up by 1,000. So Bridgetown is linear, Appleville is exponential. Okay, so it's very similar to that earlier one. If you're going up by 1,000, you go up to 5,000, then 6,000, then 7,000. Okay, should have it like this. Okay. All right, so in that case, you could see 2040 is that year, because 2040, this one's is when Appleville hits 8,000, and Bridgetown is only at 7,000. Yep, so it goes 8,000 is your answer. Before that, Bridgetown was bigger in 2010, 2020, and 2030. All right, so that's how you do that one. I would just, again, do a table. You could try to write functions for this, but just be careful with, you might mess up with the years thing, the whole, like, 2010, if you might write a function where it's doubling every year or going up 1,000 each year, then you're going to think the answer is whatever, like 2013, when it should be every 10 years. And it's a little bit annoying to write an exponential or linear function that's every 10 years. It wouldn't be that bad, though. You just it'd go up 100 a year, so 100 would be the slope for b. And for the exponential one, you would just have to do divided by 10 for the exponent. So it'd be like 1,000 times 2 to the x over 10. So you can do it like that. All right, but yeah, I think a lot of times those ones are just easier to do in a table, and you can use the calculator to help you make the table easier or something. But just by like doing the math for you. All right, 24. 2 stores have movies to rent. What? It's like a movie store. It was like Blockbuster or something? I guess so. Yeah, this is kind of an outdated question, I guess. The first store charges a $12.50 per month membership fee plus $150 per movie rented. Oh, this one's going to be annoying. Okay, so I think a lot of kids might mess this up because it's when you think per month, generally these kind of problems, you're multiplying $12.50 times the number of months, right? But they're probably going to ask what's the monthly cost. The thing that's changing is actually the movies rented, because it's saying the $12.50 you have to pay no matter what, right? That's just each month you have to pay that no matter what. That's your y-intercept actually. The $150 part is the slope, because it's 150 times the number of movies. Oh, and this is just as diabolical. Movies, you'd represent the number of movies as m, but that's also what some kids would think the number of months would be. So just really take your time. They're trying to trip you up on this. This is so annoying. The second store has no membership fee but charges $3.50 per month. So it's the y-intercept for this one is 0 per movie. I even just said per month. 350 times the number of movies, so 350m. 350 is your slope for the second one. What is the minimum number of movies a person would need to rent in a month for the first store to be a better deal? All right, well, let's see. For the first one, let's do that as f, right? F for first. F of x equals, I think it was $12.50 plus, how much were the movies? 150? 150 times the number of movies. And why didn't that graph? Oh, because I said f of x. Whatever, let's do x. And then the other one, this is the second store, so it'll be s. So the second store has no initial fee, but it's $3 per movie, I think it said. Or $3.50. $3.50. Oh, even worse. All right. So the second one is blue. The first one is red. So let's see. It looks like they cost the same if you get 6 1/4 movies, which means before that, right? The red one started off with there was no initial fee, so it's going up at a fast. That's the blue one. I mean, the blue one has no initial fee, so that's why y-intercept is 0, but it's going up at a faster rate because it costs more per movie. The other one, you have to pay that initial fee, but if you rent movies, it's going up at a slower rate. All right, so let's see. The minimum number of movies a person would need to rent for the first store to be a better deal. Well, I think you can't rent 1/4 of a movie. I know Blockbuster's a little out of date, but I assume they don't let you like break off the movie tapes or just take a 1/4 of the disc or whatever. So it's got to be probably a whole number. Again, you can't rent a negative number of DVDs as well, although that wouldn't actually matter in this problem. So let's find the first integer. It's going to be the first integer that's bigger than 6 1/4, which is going to be 7. So at 7, and if you just want to confirm, at 7, this one is about, or it's $24.50 for the store where there's no fee, and then for the store with the fee, it'd be $23. So you're saving 50 cents when you get 7 movies if you have the first membership. So your answer would be 7. That's the first time that it's a better deal. All right, so you can just do that one graphically, yeah. If you weren't allowed to calculate on this, which you are, then you can just make a table as well for that. All right, Karen has 2 dogs. The larger dog weighs 1.4 pounds more than the smaller dog. The combined weight of the 2 dogs is 12.6 pounds. What is the weight in pounds of the smaller dog? Okay, so for this, just got to make sure you write your equations really well. Let's say the larger dog weighs so it's going to be a system of equations. You just have to write your own system. Larger dog weighs 1.4 pounds more. So let's say L equals 1.4 plus S, S being the smaller. Okay, L equals 1.4 plus S is one equation. And the combined weight of the 2 dogs is 12.6. That means L plus S equals 12.6. Okay, so those are your 2 equations. And what is the weight of the smaller dog? Okay, so this one's another, I guess they really liked substitution on this test. You just plug in the L value is 1.4 plus S, plug that in for L on the first one, and that already eliminates the L, so you have just S alone. So again, L is equal to 1.4 plus S, so I would just say 1.4 plus S, the S you already had, equals 12.6. All right, so that gives you S plus S is 2S. So 2S plus 1.4 equals 12.6. And then just subtract 1.4 from both sides. You'd get 2S equals 11.2. Okay, 2S equals 11.2. And then divide both sides by 2, and you'd get S equals, well, half of 11.2 would be 5.6. Okay, it's getting really annoying to draw these backwards, but there we go. So S equals 5.6. And just to plug that back, or to check it, you could say, okay, well, if L is 1.4 bigger than S, that means L would be 5.6 plus 1.4, which is 6. Right, so we'd get 7, sorry. What am I thinking? 1 plus 5 is 6, 0.4 plus 0.6 is another 1. So L is 7, S is 5.6. 7 plus 5.6 makes 12.6, so that does add up. So what's the weight of the smaller dog? And just check, don't do all the hard parts and then give the weight of the larger dog. They wanted S alone, so S would be 5.6. Right, so that's your answer for 25. Oh, wait, I forgot. This is also, well, it didn't really matter because it was pretty easy to do that system of equations. But you could also have written it like this. You could have just typed them in into Desmos. You could have said L equals 1.4 plus S. Okay, so it's 1.4 bigger than the smaller dog. And L plus S equals 12.6. Now, do they not do that? I mean, I guess you could use Y and X or something. I don't know. All right, so you'd go like that, and then you want to just find the intersection. You just have to make sure you know X is the smaller dog here. All right, so X is your small, when X is 5.6, Y is 7. All right, so that's another way you could do it. I guess they do it with other variables, but not if they're on the same side, because I guess they can't tell which one's Y and which one's X then. But yeah, so this works as well. All right, let's go on to number 26. So which choice could be modeled by a linear function? So that means it's going up by the same amount each time. So the amount of money Y in an account after X years earning 4% interest compounded annually. So interest is going to be exponential. Right? You're multiplying by 1.04, and then you're making money on the money that you already made, right? Because it's compounded. So A does not work, right? A would be exponential, We're looking for a linear one, so it's going to make a straight line going up the same amount. Monthly cost Y to use a cell phone for X minutes at a rate of 4 cents per minute. Yeah, I think that would work. If you're saying like the input is the number of minutes, your output is the cost. Yeah, so this one seems like it's going to work. It's going up 4 cents for every minute. All right, so I'm saying B already, but let's just rule out Y, C, and D will not work. The height Y of a ball after bouncing X times if each bounce reaches 2/3 of the previous height. That's exponential decay, right? You're multiplying by 2/3 each time. It's getting smaller and smaller, but at a slower and slower rate. It actually will never hit 0, technically. And then the amount Y of radioactive material remaining after X years when the decay occurs. So this is also exponential decay. So C and D are exponential decay. A is exponential growth. B is the only one that's linear, just linear growth. All right, so that would be B. Oscar planted a tomato seed in his garden. Each day he recorded the height of the tomato plant. During which interval did the tomato plant grow the fastest? Okay. Well, you're just looking for the one with the steepest slope. Now you could do this mathematically and just say which one's like the change in Y for a change of 2 in X was the biggest. But you can also just look at it and see, right, this is clearly the steepest part of the line. Now, if you're between this part and this part, I guess you could, do it mathematically just to be sure. Say this one went from 4 to 7, so it went up by 3 when X only went up by 2. So this had a slope of 3/2, right, up 3 over 2. This one went up from 2 to 4, so it went up by 2 when X went up from 6 to 8. So this is up 2 over 2, even though it looks like up 2 over 1. So this is a slope of 1. So yeah, the steepest part is from 8 to 10, if that's an option. So day 8 to day 10, that's C. Just be careful. Some people might go like, oh, this is day 1, day 2, day 3, something like that. No, they have it labeled here. It's going up by 2 days at a time. Okay, just take your time on that. But that'd be C from day 8 to day 10. All right. The function a of n equals 3n minus 7 represents the value of the nth term in a sequence. What is the sum of the first and fifth terms of the sequence? All right, so the first term is when n is 1. So just plug in 1 there. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 7 gives you -4. So that's -4. And the fifth term would be when n is 5. So 15 minus 7 is 8. So from -4, they say what's the sum? Okay, be careful there. I think a lot of times you'd think what's the difference between them or how much does it increase? But they say what's the sum? So you're adding -4 and 8. -4 plus 8 makes +4. All right, so +4 is your answer there. The width of a rectangle is 3/4 its length. The perimeter of the rectangle is 420 feet. What is the length in feet of the rectangle? Okay. So this one, you're just going to write some equations. The width of a rectangle is 3/4 its length. So we'd say W equals 3/4 L. Okay, that's one equation. And then we'd say the perimeter of the rectangle is 420 feet. What is the length in feet? So the perimeter is going to be 2 times the length. So, sorry, this is always annoying to do backwards. 2L plus 2W, right? 2 times the length plus 2 times the width is equal to the perimeter of a rectangle. Equals 420. Okay, 420. All right. So what is the length in feet of the rectangle? All right. Well, actually, if we change the width, let's say width equals X, and the length equals Y, right? We could just, it's an ugly L. Length equals Y. We could just plug this into Desmos as well, because it's still the calculator active section. So don't forget that you can use that tool, because it really makes it a lot easier. So we said the width is X. Let's do X equals 3/4 Y. Okay. And 2X, or no, 2Y, I guess, plus 2X. It really didn't matter. It's a commutative property. Equals 420. So those are our two lines, and they're both true at this point. So 90 and 120. So your width would be 90, and your length would be 120. Right? And be careful. I know in general, I'd wrote that backwards. I know in general you have the width is smaller than the length. That's how I would always write a problem. But they don't always follow that on tests, which is a little annoying. Just make sure, that's why I wrote x is w, y is l, so you can see, all right, our x value is 90, so your width is 90, your y value is 120. All right, what is the length in feet of the rectangle? They want just the length, so they want 120. Okay, so take your time on that. Again, don't do the hard part. In this case, it wasn't that hard because we used Desmos, but don't do the computation, the actual algebra and math, and then just give them the wrong answer. Don't give them the width instead of length or something. All right, so take your time on that. All right, number 30. All right, two functions are shown below. Click the points at which the graph of the two functions intersect. So this one, you know, again, way easier with Desmos. 3x squared plus 14x minus 5. What you would do if you didn't have Desmos is just set them equal to each other. So so you'd say the y, it's like when the y values are the same. So set, 3x squared plus 14x minus 5 equal to 11x plus 13. And then you just subtract 11x from both sides. You get 3x squared plus 3x, subtract 13 from both sides, get minus 18. And then you just factor that and solve for the zeros. So, you could do it that way. But, if you just type them in, it's 1. The other one is 11x plus 13. That's supposed to be minus 5, right? 11x plus 13, is that right? Yeah. And, just technically I should say like y equals or f of x and g of x equal. I don't think it actually matters though, but so let's see, they intersect at 2 points, which makes sense. Let's see, 2, 35, and the other one is -3, -20. So 235 and -3, -20. So these two would be your answers on the thing. Would you click them? So you click this point and this point, right? If they have one like this, where it's technology enhanced, where you choose the answers, assume that probably there's 2 or 3 answers. Right, because if it was just one of them, they would just make it a multiple choice question. I mean, I haven't seen the test, so I don't know for sure. But I think that's probably fair to assume if they're doing some weird format where they're trying to say, oh, you click the options. Or maybe if they change it from like normally it's circles and they change it to squares or something. It's probably something weird where more than one of them is an option. And they're trying to make sure that you know all of the answers. I think if you only put one of them for this, you would get no credit. So you need to make sure you put both. Okay. And again, if you didn't have a calculator for a question like this, just set this equal to this. Then you're trying to find the zeros, so get, subtract 11x from both sides, subtract 13 from both sides, and you have to factor it, which actually isn't that hard. You just you divide everything by 3 because all of them would be multiples of 3. 3x squared plus 3x minus 18. Those are all multiples of 3. So you'd get x squared plus x minus 6. Which is going to be x plus 3 times x minus 2, which gives you -3 and +2 as your answers. And then you have to plug them back in to find what the y values are. So that's the tricky part, is even if you solve for the x values, you need to then plug them in to solve for y. But you can actually plug them into this linear one, and that would be a lot easier. Right? So -3 times 11 is -33, plus 13 gives you -20. And then 11 times 2 gives you 30, or 11 times 2 is 22, plus 13 is 35. The other way you could do these, which would take a little bit longer, but if you have a calculator, it's not that bad, is just plug all of the x values in to both functions. So plug in -5 into both of these, or like all of the x's here. Plug -3 in, plug 2 in, plug 6 in, and see which of them works for both functions. Or they need to work for both. I don't think that's the fastest way, but or even if you had a handheld calculator, that wouldn't take that long. And that's, if you have extra time to check at the end, that's worth, potentially worth doing, right? If you have like an hour to spare or 30 minutes to spare, you've already done all of the problems, feel confident in them. Right? That's a good way to check. Just be 100% positive you got them all right. Right? All right, so that's 30. 31 here. The table below shows U.S. average life expectancy at birth in years in various decades. Okay, so your input is the years since 1930, and the output is life expectancy. What is the meaning of the slope of the linear best fit model of the data? Okay, so slope means for every 1 year after 1930, that's how much you expect the life expectancy to go up, right? Because it's the change in the output per input. So Okay. The predicted average life from 60 at birth, 1930. So it's not going to be A or B, because A and B are talking about the y-intercept, right? What it was at 1930, what it's expected to be. They're asking for the slope. Okay, so it's either C or D. Even without making the table, I know it's either C or D. Now, we know how to do it in Desmos, right? You type table, let's say table, and then you type in all of these points, and all of these points, and then you do y1 squiggle mx1 plus b. Okay. Squiggle mx1 plus b, which I can do if you'd like. I guess I'll do it really quickly, but maybe not even with all the points, just because we're getting a rough estimate, because it's either 0.2 or 6.7. But if you want, you could even try to do it without the calculator. Just be like, all right, well, how much is this going up each time? Now, I think I see what the trick is going to be here already. Is if you try to do it without the calculator, you might be like, oh, it goes up about 6 each time, right? Or, no, it doesn't even go up 6 each time. It goes up, it looks like more like 2 each time. Okay, so it goes up about 2 each time. So you might be like, oh, neither of these options is good. But if you look at the x's, it's going up by 10 years. So you have to divide by the change in x to 10. So if it's going up about 2, then you divide that by 10, it's going to be 0.2. So I'm already saying it's going to be D. But just to confirm, I'll plug in a couple of these. I won't do the whole table, which is not really a great practice, but I'm just trying to do it a little bit quicker now. And 62.9, 68.2, 69.7. Okay, I don't remember any of those numbers. 62.9, 68.2. I think it was 69.7. 70.8, 73.7. And is up to 50. All right, so already just like with those points, you can see the slope is 0.242. It's probably going to get closer to 0.2 as you go up, because I think it was making bigger jumps earlier on as there were more medical advancements and things like, a lot more people smoked, or just people quitting smoking as the years went after 1930. So I think the jumps will get smaller as we go, but it's much closer to 0.2 than it is to 6.7 or whatever it said. So again, they're asking about the slope. One of these, A or B, one of those might be true, but they're specifically asking about the slope of the best fit line. So the slope has to do with the rate of change, so how much it's going up per year, and that would be again D is your best option. All right, so when you're doing it yourself, you should probably do the entire table just in case one of these changes the data a lot, but whatever, I'm not doing that. All right, the choices below are data sets. In the choices, W is a constant. Each choice has the same mean. Which choice has the greatest standard deviation? Okay. So all of them, the mean appears to be W, but it's like which of them is the most spread out, essentially. All right, well, standard deviation has to do with like the spread from the middle, so which is the most spread out from the middle. So right off the bat, or I guess, yeah, spread from the mean. So let's say these are 2 and 2, these are 2 and 2. This is 1 and 2, 1 and 2. This one is 1 and 3, 1 and 3. This one's 0, 0 and 3, 0 and 3. All right, so we can immediately eliminate D and A. So it's between B and C. Because if you add up the total differences, it's 4 and 4, so that's 8, and then it's 4 and 4, that's 8. But it's not just about the sum of the differences. You're squaring the differences. It has to do with like squaring the differences, and then you divide by the number of things. So if you wanted to be safe, you could type it into the calculator. But I'm going to tell you it's just going to be C, because even though they have the same total spread from the data, the biggest outliers are further away, right? So these ones are 3 and 3 away. So squaring that bigger amount is going to make it count more than just all of them being 2 away. Right, so you can think of like 3 squared is 9, plus 1 squared is 1, so 9 plus 1 is 10. Whereas over here, 2 squared is 4, plus 2 squared is 4, that's 4 plus 4 is 8. So again, the B and C will be the two biggest standard deviations probably. D might potentially be bigger than B. Yeah, actually D might be bigger than B. But C is the biggest one here, just because it has the biggest maximum and minimum, same as D, and these other points are also slightly spread out. Abby scored 87, 93, 96, and 89 on her first 4 history quizzes. What score does Abby need to get on her 5th quiz to have an average of exactly 91 on her 4 history quizzes? All right, so with this, what you could do, because it's multiple choice, is just add up these 4 and then plug in all of these values, or each of these values separately. So plug in 90, plug in 94, plug in 98, plug in 100, and then for all of them, divide that total sum by 5 and see which one works. Because it's multiple choice, that works. It's not going to take that long. The best way to do it is to multiply 91 by 5, because the average is the sum divided by the number of things. So if you take a 5th quiz, there's 5 things. So whatever the sum is, you're dividing that by 5, and you want that to be 91. So if we do it in reverse, starting from the mean being 91 that we want. So multiply 91 by 5, which would be, well, 9 times 5 is 45. So it's going to be 450 when you multiply it by 90 plus 5. So 455. And then you just subtract the 4 quizzes that are already done, right? Those scores can't change. So 455 minus 87 minus 93 minus 96 minus 89. Let's delete all this stuff. So 455 minus, I think it was 87, 93, 95, and something else. Let's see. Oh, no, there's no 95. 87, 93, 96, 89. Is that right? 89. Yep, so 90. All right, and again, just to check it, you just do 90 plus all these things. We don't need to do this because we already know it's right, but saying if you were doing guess and check, you get that 455 and then 455 divided by 5. Oh, it's 91, so that's what we wanted. Right. All right, so this one would be a 90. All right, the perimeter of the triangle below is 8x minus 6, which expression represents the length of QR. All right, well, we just need to get a total of 8 x's, and for our constant, we want it to add up to negative 6. So x plus 3x makes 4x. We want 4 more x's to get up to 8x, so it's going to be one of these with 4x, so either A or B. And then 1 plus negative 1 makes 0, so those cancel out. We need it to add up to negative 6. So 0 plus what makes negative 6? It would be negative 6. And then once you have your answer, I'll just check it. 4x plus 3x plus x, that's 4x plus 3x is 7x, plus x is 8x, good. Negative 6 plus negative 1 is negative 7. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. All right, so B would be your answer there. What are the solutions to the equation 4x squared minus 52x plus 169 equals 121? All right, so when they say the solutions, you're essentially finding the zeros, except there's no y equal. Just subtract 121 from both sides, and you'll get this a quadratic equal to 0, and then you're just solving the zeros. So if you want to solve this, you could just type it into Desmos. So 4x squared. They might give you a question like this that's not calculator active, though. Minus 52x minus, or it's plus. So plus 169, but then you're going to be subtracting 121 from both sides. Right, set that equal to y. Okay. So when is this equal to 0? 1 and, or 1 comma 0 and 12 comma 0. So when x is 1 and when x is 12. So 1 and 12. If you want to check it, just plug these in. So 4 times 1 squared is 4 minus 52. So 4 minus 52 would give you negative 48. Negative 48 plus 169 is negative 121, or is positive 121. Sorry, good. So that one works. 12 squared is 144. So 4 times 144 would be, what is that? 576, I think. 576 minus 52 times 12. I don't know, let's just type that in. 576 minus 52 times 12 is negative 48 plus 169 makes 121 as well. All right, so 1 and 12 would work. If you plug in the other ones, they're not going to work. Okay, so D is your answer there. And then David has a rectangle and a right triangle. The length of the rectangle is 5 more than its width. The length of the shorter leg of the rectangle, or the shorter leg of the triangle, is equal to the rectangle's width. The length of the longer leg of the triangle is twice the length of the rectangle. Which function FW represents, or f of W represents the combined area of the rectangle and the triangle? All right, this one seems kind of annoying. Let's see how many we have left. Let's go all the way up to 50. All right. I think I'll do 36 and then I'll call it for tonight. I'll put the rest up later. Let's see. David is a rectangle. Like the length of the rectangle is 5 more than its width. Okay, so let's do length will be y. Okay, let me just write that up here. Y is the length. All right, which means x is the width. So that doesn't graph any. Oh, x minus width. That's a little confusing. Why? So don't graph those. All right, let's see. The length of the rectangle is 5 more than the width. So y equals x plus 5. Okay. The length of the shorter leg of the triangle is equal to the rectangle's width. Of the triangle? What triangle? Oh, he's a triangle and a right. Okay, I didn't read that part. The length of the shorter leg of the triangle is equal to the rectangle's width. Okay. I feel like I need to draw something for this. So we'd say we've got W is your width, and W plus 5 is your length of the rectangle. And then you've got a right triangle where the shorter leg is W. And the length of the longer leg of the triangle is twice the length of the rectangle. All right, so it's 2 times W plus 5. All right, I'm forgetting to write this backwards. W plus 5. And this is 2 times W plus 5. Okay, so you got this, right? W times W plus 5 and 1/2 times W times 2 times W plus 5. All right, which function represents the combined area of the rectangles? Okay, so for a triangle, for a right triangle, you've got the height and the base because the two legs of a right triangle make a right angle, so it's already a height and a base. So it's 1/2 times base height, or base height over 2, which the divide by 2 part just basically gets rid of this doubling the length, right? So it's just going to become just basically W times W plus 5. Make sure you distribute. So W times W is W squared. W times 5 is 5W. So you get W squared plus 5W is the area of the triangle. It's also actually going to be the area of the rectangle, because the rectangle you just do length times width, and this this one's not doubled, but then you don't have to half it. So it ends up also being W squared. I forgot the squared part. W squared plus 5W. So we get 2 W squareds, and we get 2 5Ws. That's 2 times 5W is 10W. So we want the one that's 2W squared plus 10W. So just A. All right, so that one's actually really easy, but they're just trying to trip you up with, right? I think by this point in the test, your brain's a little bit fried, and hopefully you've got enough sleep before it. But just draw a diagram, take your time on this, make sure you remember the area of a triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. And the area of a rectangle is length times width. That's all you got to do. And just read really carefully here. All right. So that one was A. And I guess I'll wrap it up there. I'll probably come back and finish the rest of these later. I think there are 50 questions on this. But so far, those really weren't that bad. Just remember that you have your calculator, but you also don't have to use the calculator. So I think the one with the census, the functions with the census was probably easier without the calculator. Whereas some of the systems of equations or quadratics are just, it's a little bit easier if you don't have to worry about using elimination or substitution. You just plug it in, see where they cross. Now, if you have extra time, go back and solve it algebraically if you did it graphically, or vice versa. But yeah, so I'll probably put a description of this at the beginning. But for every question, I'm gonna put a time tag, so you can just click and see when I talk about that question specifically and what the topic is, so you can go through it a little bit quicker. But yeah, just do your best on these, and let me know in the comments if there are any that I was not clear in my description of. Maybe I'm going to post a link that will explain it a little bit better. Or if you think I made a mistake on one of them, or just in general, if there's anything that I talked about that you would like me to go more in depth with. But yeah, I'll keep working on these. I don't know if I'll upload it as one large video or put this one alone. If I put this one alone, then just watch for I'll probably upload the remaining problems in a second video. All right. Well, thank you.